Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's session. I'm Madeleine Oppert, SVP of Global Marketing at Tech Informed, and your host for today's session. Today, we're asking a fairly direct question. Are we still building B2B campaigns for a buyer journey that no longer exists? Buyers are harder to reach, their journeys are less predictable, and many marketing teams are doing more while seeing less. So for the next 45 minutes, I'm going to be discussing this with Josh Jacobs, Director of Media Strategy at Just Global. Josh has more than 10 years of experience across both B2B and B2C media and has spent the past 7 years helping clients develop campaigns across including cybersecurity, cloud, software, and insurance. Welcome, Josh. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to talk about all this.
And if anyone is confused that you're seeing 4 people on screen right now, we seem to be having a technical issue. So I do apologize for that. Hopefully you are only seeing Josh and I. It's just Josh and I that's going to be having this conversation together. So Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. I think the first question I would like to ask you is if you think back to the last campaign brief that genuinely excited you, what did you see in those first few minutes that made you think this campaign has real potential?
Yeah, good question. Great place to start because when I think about the answer to that question, I think about the beginning of a campaign, and really it was the campaign details, the brief, and how clearly those were given to us. So it had a thought through goal. I had connected measurement strategy, a messaging strategy, in-depth audience details, definitions, long-term planning horizon. So, and when I say that, I don't mean 3 months, I mean 2 to 3 quarters. Really thinking long-term with kind of how they were approaching it.
Do you see
So
so when you say quarters, are you seeing so some people are giving you briefs and it's kind of like plaguing marketing at the moment, isn't it? Where people are like, we'll do a quick campaign because our website traffic has fallen off a cliff, or because our CEO thinks we need more leads, or our CMO has told us that, like, they've just spoken with sales and somebody wasn't aware that we had done something. So we'll quickly pump money into a short 2, 3, 6 week burst or something. Do you see, is that still happening? Do people still do that?
it definitely happens. I would say for a lot of our clients, we get a mix, right? So we do have some clients who do longer term campaigns. We do have some who are still thinking in quarters, and then we still get some ad hoc in between. I think ideally, if we're talking about best in class and where we'd want to steer clients towards, it is thinking longer term, because if you're thinking in these individual silos, you're not planning ahead, right? You're thinking very, again, it's silos, right? So as we think about the future of how we approach campaigns and strategy and thinking longer term is really, really big to do that.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And I know when we spoke about this during our discovery call, you mentioned how some people do, it's great to start with a brief because some people will come and say, no, we don't do briefs, right? Do you think that's because clients or teams are not sure of exactly what it is that they want to achieve? Or do you think it's a lack of knowing how to put a great brief together? What do you think the blocker is there that some teams are experiencing?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's probably a few things, right? So part of it is probably maybe there's a bit of a knowledge gap there, but I really feel like it's a time issue. I think that marketers are really strapped for time right now, and so when you hand them a document and it's got a bunch of different sections, you look at that and you go, okay, what are the 3 things that I need to fill out that I can do in 5 minutes? Because that's the amount of time I have between this call and the next one before I got to start thinking about something else. Um, but but long term, again, that's where it hurts you because you're looking at a budget. Sometimes you may not have a goal. You don't have a thought through strategy. So that's where, we talk about like random acts of marketing and things like that. That's where if it's not connected, if it's not fully thought through and you don't have those details, what are you trying to achieve with this campaign?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's so important. I mean, you can really see campaigns that I've seen work over the years is when sales and marketing are working together, shared goals, budgets very clearly outlined, timelines really clearly outlined. Anything else that our audience should know, like if we're putting a campaign brief together, if you want this campaign to succeed, you need to have X, Y, and Z at least laid out.
Yeah, so I mean, if we're talking about a demand campaign, you have to know what your goals are. I still run into briefs and campaigns and things where we don't have a target. How do you know if you're being successful in a campaign if you don't have a pipeline goal that you're trying to reach? And I don't mean just a marketing pipeline goal, but I mean a paid media goal. What for this dollar amount, this budget that you have that you are investing, what are you responsible for in your outcomes?
Mm,
Because as marketers and as planners, if we are putting together a media mix and a strategy, if we don't have a goal that we're trying to reach, how do we do that, right? Like how do we know that we're successful? How do we know what the channel mix should look like? How do we know if we are estimating the right amount of pipeline, the right amount of leads? And then on the brand side, I think it's much more, messaging strategy. What are the audience you're trying to reach? uh what is your awareness goal? Again, it still comes back to goals, right? Because without some sort of lift measurement or um something like that, then again it is a random act of marketing, and with brand it's a very expensive random act of marketing if you're trying to serve impressions or reach or frequency. I mean, again, that's all great. Those are important KPIs, but what I mean, how does that impact the business, right? And I think that's where like what I've heard from CMOs and what I've heard my clients talk about from their CMOs is, well, uh, why am I doing brand right now? Well, that question is probably coming up because, okay, what's your goal? What are you trying to achieve as a business?
mm,
If you don't have a brand lift study or a brand health survey and you're not measuring your awareness over time, then yeah, you have no idea what your brand is doing for you. If you can't connect those pieces from brand back to your demand and you're starting to talk about, okay, what's my pipeline lift? What's my on-site traffic, or even what's my LLM citation looking like, then
mm,
then you have no idea what success looks like. And yeah,
yeah.
you're going to look at your brand campaign and you're going to say, what's this doing for me? I don't know.
Yeah. The facts that CMOs are at a place where they have to say, or we've gotten to a place where we say, why am I focusing on brand? It's really concerning to me, right? Because I thought we had I thought we had gotten past that so many years ago. I mean, like I was giving away my age now, but I remember when I was studying and my lecturers would say to me like, but we don't have to fight for money anymore from the CFOs because the brand is on the value sheet, right? It has a value attached to it, just the name, the brand itself.
Mhm.
The fact that we've gone like 180 degrees or 300, yeah, 180 degrees back to why are we doing brand? Because I just need to get leads in the door, I think shows the real state of where marketing and business is at the moment. And I hopefully going through the rest of this conversation, we're going to allow everyone to go back to the boardroom, to their CMOs and say, the brand's really important because if you don't have the brand, no one's going to know that they need you. So there's going to be no demand. I
Right.
think it's pretty,
Exactly.
Simple as that, right? So, right. So let's dive into. So tell us about the campaign that taught you the lesson you wish you had learned, let's say a year ago.
And it's, I know we talked about 5 years before. I think my
Uh,
answer is still the same for both of those, right? Like a year ago, I mean, we were just starting to talk about LLMs. We had
mm,
ChatGPT, we had Gemini, uh, and what's fun but also kind of scary about advertising is how fast this industry moves. So. Even a year ago, what wouldn't have worked then, or what would have worked then, wouldn't work now, and vice versa. But still, I mean, I think like my example with all of that is like if I think about a year ago, or even 2 years ago, I was talking about a lot about inbound, right?
mhm,
Inbound, I would have told you that was the key to win. It's all about your search activity. It's all about social is bringing in high quality inbound traffic. Um, uh, and ironically, I would have told you that content syndication was becoming less and less important.
mm,
Because again, that's your outbound motion, but your inbound is where you're getting that really high quality. Um, I think with LLMs, it's really flipped that on its head, which is so interesting, to me at least, because now inbound, it's still a thing, but it's different, right? Like your inbound is coming more and more from LLM citations. It's coming from people doing research on there, and they don't need to come to your website. So inbound traffic, the the way that it is happening is changing now. And people are still coming to your site, but it is probably higher quality than it ever has been, but the volume is so much lower. That outbound, and that's where the resurgence of content syndication and all this is so important, because to what you said before, your sales teams are saying, "Hey, where are my leads? Where's my inbound, traffic? Where are all these?" And so balancing the two of those is so, so important.
yeah, absolutely. And I think so. Going back to, I mean, we're sitting in a bit of a dark funnel, and I know this has become quite a buzzword, dark funnel, and people are kind of like, "Mm, yes, dark funnels, we know," but we really. So if we're looking at our playground analogy, which we also spoke about in the discovery call, so really the way that we attract leads is now in a playground. So people are coming in, but how people are getting from um, a from the swings onto the merry-go-round is in a funnel that we don't in a way that we don't know because it's hidden, right? So we need
Hmm.
to understand that better. And the only way that I think we're going to be able to attract more people into our brand is by people knowing our brand, right? So which makes the argument for those who saying, why am I talking about brand and is a brand campaign still valuable? Well, yes, I think now more than ever, because if you don't have a strong brand, AI is not going to cite you. If you don't
Yeah.
have a strong brand, you're not going to be one of the three vendors that the extensive buying committee is going to be evaluating when choosing a vendor that they need. And you're not going to have the trust and credibility, right? So super important and so interesting that you mentioned about the content syndication and how it's come back into play because I just really hope the content that people are using in content syndication is well thought out. You have your audience at the heart of what you're putting out, and you're not solely using AI to write content and landing page copy and hoping that people are now going to think, oh, yay, these people are great. I want to work with you, right? Remember the playground, remember the different funnels, and remember trust. Is there anything else that you kind of, if we could leave the audience with one nugget to be able to say, like, a lesson I learned, do this, don't do that in like one sentence? I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, I mean, you just talked about content, so I feel like that's like a really great one to kind of zero in on, which is you're not just making content for humans anymore. You're making content for humans and for the bots. And there's a way to do both of those. But what we talk a lot about with clients and with partners like you guys is um, how can we structure our content so that it is readable by both, so that it gets indexed properly, so that it gets cited, and then that ultimately, kind of brings it right back to the brand.
100%.
The
Yeah.
the other piece, I'm sorry, I also wanted to add in here because we were talking about brand and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but um uh we talked about how important brand is in and especially in this new buyer's journey. We have a couple stats that we talk about with clients that I think it's potentially, you said you even had higher numbers, but 83% of B2B purchase activity happens before buyers engage sales. 86% of B2B buyers have a day one shortlist, and 92% purchase from that initial consideration set. And all of that comes back to, again, that LLM research, that usage. And so, the conversation again that we're having with clients is uh, if you're not involved in that, if you're not being cited by different LLMs, you're not even in the room. You can't, it doesn't become how good is your sales team. It doesn't become, did you get the leads from those accounts that you wanted? Becomes like, okay, well, you're not even in the room. You're not in the consideration. Maybe someone will download something, but like you're over here, all the players are in this room, and this is who they're probably going to buy from.
Correct. And the content that AI is scraping to cite is not written by AI. And I think that's a really important distinction for everybody to make. Don't go and write content with AI and hope that AI is then going to cite it, right? I know some really interesting, I think when, part of our previous discussion as well, you need to look at AI and these LLMs as a new target audience, right? They need to be added
Mhm.
into your target audience. So when you're getting to know your target audience, get to know LLMs, get to know the type of questions, audit it. Audit what the brands, what LLMs are saying about your brand as well, and where's those gaps. We have a question from our audience, which I want to post to. It says, "Hi, Josh. What's one mistake you see even experienced marketers making repeatedly during campaigns?"
This is a good question. I feel like it keeps coming back to goals.
Mm.
This is kind of a tee up for the next question almost, but uh, we keep talking about CTR, and I think that comes down to a lot of, like we don't have a goal. We don't know how to we don't have another metric to point to for are we being successful? Is this what we are trying to achieve? Are there any other business goals that we are impacting? So we come back to CTR, and we go, was our CTR above benchmark? And that is my least favorite thing to talk about with any campaign, with any client, whether it's
Mhm.
brand, demand. I mean, really, you shouldn't be talking about CTR much with demand, but um, it's it doesn't tell you anything. It's just a click, right? But what we are responsible to for uh, our bosses and for our business is pipeline. It is leads. It is engagement. Um, so I think that is one thing that keeps coming back, but I I wanna push us, and I think all marketers really to think beyond something so simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back down to the brief, right? If you don't know what you're trying to achieve, you're not going to know what metrics to follow. So that's why sitting
Yeah.
down and working on that brief where we started initially is so important. So to go on to our next question, you spent years advising clients across enterprise technology. What's the hardest conversation you've ever had to have with a client about a campaign? And I feel it might be about goals again.
It might be. I so the hardest conversation that I've had to have was talking about performance and reporting for a campaign that happened in a silo.
Mm,
It didn't have a strategy, it didn't have a goal, there wasn't any measurement. So again, we come back to CTR, a client comes to us and they say, "Well, how did it do?" It ran. We had some clicks. Our CTR was above benchmark, and you're now going to your bosses and you're going, "We were above benchmark on CTR," and they go, "Okay, so what? Now what do I do with that? I got some clicks, but like, were they good clicks? Did they convert on anything? Did they fill out any forms? Or we like, what do we do now?" And the answer is, well, I don't know. We just did this thing. We ran a newsletter. We bought some leads, and so
Yeah.
uh that's the hardest conversations that I have with clients.
And is that because, again, when you say in silo, is it in silo of other projects that they have within the organization? Is it in silo of teams? Is it sort of marketing and sales not speaking to each other, or is it marketing one marketing activity not speaking to another marketing activity? When you just let's expand a little bit on that.
All of the above.
Okay, fine.
It is sales not talking to marketing. It is marketing not talking to other marketing. It's field marketing doing something that they want to do, and the COE doing something that they want to do. And we have this shift that's happening now where marketing teams are shrinking, uh, and so there's this bit of, everyone had their kind of fiefdoms in these different companies where it's like, okay, this is my budget, this is my goal, and everyone's talking about, okay, well, what did I deliver? What did I do for the business? And I think the for organizations who want to win and who want to do well, you have to think as a whole. We have to be talking together. We have to break down some of those walls and those silos. And again, I think with the shrinking teams and marketing orgs that we have, it's forcing some of that change.
Mm.
But it has to happen.
Yeah, and happen fast. I mean, I'm very blessed with the sales team that are very collaborative. And I do feel for those brands that don't have a good sales marketing relationship. And I think if there's anything I would implore anyone on this call to go and do is really become very familiar with your sales team. If you guys are actually working for the same goal, right? I mean, you helping one another. And I think brands and having a campaign and running those metrics past the sales team to say, like, would this campaign work for you? Like, is this ICP correct? And help get your sales team behind supporting the campaign. Have you ever had that? Have you ever had a campaign where marketing and sales have worked so closely together where you got this brief and you were like, campaign metrics strategy on point, sales is involved, marketing's involved, and it's really worked? Let's give our audience something they can take back and say, Josh told me that this worked for so and so company, so I want to try it.
I wish I could give a good example. I've seen I've seen it get closer to that, right? So,
Okay.
I've had one of my clients, they historically were very, siloed from sales. Marketing was like, well, I've got my pipeline goals, and sales is over here saying, well, hey, these leads you're giving me suck. And so you've got two orgs saying it's the other person's fault. Like the Spider-Man meme, right? Everyone's pointing at the other person saying, well, it's them, no, it's them. And uh uh, the shift happened where they started updating their scoring models, so that it did make certain channels more difficult because it was a volume over quality strategy previously. And so I think the shift from here and what I've heard sales teams asking for the marketers in the room is, I don't want volume, I want quality. And again, I think it comes back to like shrinking teams, right? Like more
Mm.
leads does not equal better. It
Yeah.
might look really good from an attribution standpoint if you're just pumping out leads and things like that, but you have to think about, is there's a limited number of people in market. And so if you're just pumping out those leads, if you think about the 95/5 rule, if 5% of those are right, but you've got sales trying to talk to 100% of the leads you're giving
Yeah.
them, they're going to
Yeah.
get a lot of people saying, "Hey, this isn't right for me."
Yeah.
So again, stop with volume, start thinking about quality.
Excellent advice. Josh, another thing I think a lot of people, a lot of marketers are speaking about at the moment with campaigns is distribution. And actually, a question has come in from our audience on exactly that. Do you think distribution is the problem when when planning campaigns, or a lack of distribution strategy? Like, where do you think distribution fits into it? And do you think that's playing a role in the success of a campaign?
So I'm gonna take distribution as channels.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say, like, I would call it more strategy. I think that's kind of the missing piece. I've said random acts of marketing several times now, and I think without a strategy, that's what you're doing. You are you're throwing things at the walls, you're trying different things, and you're hoping something sticks, and you're it looks great in a QBR. Hey, I tested this channel. But the question should come back to, okay, well, great, you tested that channel. How did that fit into your overall strategy? And if you don't know the answer to that, that's a big problem. And there's no way that you can say something was successful or was a good test if you don't know how it fit into everything. Um,
Or why you
so
chose it?
or why you chose it. Yes, exactly. So I think it really does come back to the strategy of it. Because a channel is a channel, right? It is, we as marketers, as people, as buyers, like, I think that's something that I like to think about a lot when I'm planning is, um, we are, we're not just reaching, businesses or numbers. These are actual living people like you and me, and we go and live our lives, and we don't consume one channel, even though one channel or two channels maybe gets more of that attribution. Every single piece fits into that buyer journey. Every single piece, even though it doesn't get clicked on, even though, attribution might tell you, or might be difficult for it, they all play a role in that journey. And they create that influence that then leads to conversion later.
Right. Brilliant. And then moving on, have you ever ignored what the data was telling you because your instinct said something different? And if you did, were you right?
Yeah, I feel like I'm talking about CTR a lot, but I think it, as an agency, we do like to lead with the data. So I'll preface by saying I think it depends, right? What's the data source, and how good is it or how bad is it?
Yep.
Um, I like to use what I would call the Goldilocks rule of it, which is that, if something looks really, really good, I don't trust it. If something is really bad, well, then it's bad. And if something is above benchmark, but within a realm of like, okay, yeah, that was a good campaign, then that's the data, that's the numbers that I trust.
Okay.
Um, and I think a great, like, throwback example, and what I think about when I think about, well, why do we do this? Is there was a programmatic DSP that maybe some people have heard of called Rocket Fuel. And back in the day, I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that, they were the top DSP. Nobody could beat them. They had the best performance. Um, uh, and when we kind of looked under the hood and dug a little bit deeper, it turned out that their performance was really good because they figured out how to get the last click. So from an attribution standpoint, they looked fantastic. They had lower viewability, so you could really cheaply and efficiently serve that last impression to get the last click or get the last view attribution.
Mm.
And once we started to separate those things out, it was like, okay. we're starting to see what's going on here. They're they're cookieing people and what we call, cookie bombing, meaning that you're getting lots and lots of impressions, low viewability, and they're gaming the system to look really good. And so I think that's where I come back to this. Like I don't trust really good performance. I trust okay performance. Trust slightly above benchmark. I don't trust, it can't be too good.
So when they say it's too good to be true, you really need to look into that then.
Yes.
Yes. Right. I think what's something that almost every B2B marketer believes today that is simply not true?
So yeah, that one for me is brand. Again,
Mm,
I think that it comes back to brand has had this. I don't want to say resurgence, but I think in B2B it's been very difficult historically to defend the value of your brand campaigns because it's so easy to get that attribution right on the demand side.
mm,
Where if I'm a CRO or I'm a CMO and I'm looking at the numbers, I'm going again, uh, and this is depending on how you think about it, but I go, okay, it's really easy to see, okay, I see what my demand campaigns are giving me on the brand side. um, it is harder to connect those 2 things, and it is harder to tell the story of, "This is what this campaign is doing," not just for my, my awareness, but for my pipeline for my demand campaigns. There is a connection between those 2. We know this now. Um
yeah.
so I talked about before some of those stats around buyer's journey and things like that. But another stat that I came across that to me is a bit scary. But it really proves the risk of poorly orchestrated campaigns, which is 40 to 60% of enterprise B2B deals stall because key stakeholders are never effectively reached by marketing. 40 to 60%. So
Yeah.
that's about half, a little bit more than half at the high end of deals. Maybe you got those MQLs, maybe you got your leads in, but it stalled. Nothing happened after that because we were so focused on that pipeline. We did great content syndication and we got that initial touch point, and then we had nothing. How did we continue engaging those leads? How did we continue to move them down funnel? How did we set them up to have conversations with sales and set sales up to close those deals?
Mm.
If we don't know the answers to that, if we don't have campaigns in market to have that happen, they're going to stall.
It's a very powerful stat that. It's quite frightening actually to think. Wow. Okay, so moving on with that powerful stat that you've just left us with, what's a decision you've made in the last 2 years that your 2019 self would have completely disagreed with?
Yeah, so for this one, there's 2 channels actually, and 2019 is a great year to talk about this, right? Because in 2020, we all know what happened, and, the world completely changed, and the channels that you used completely changed again. But,
Mm.
um, linear TV and out-of-home are the 2 that, in 2019 that I would not have agreed with as good channels for B2B marketing. Um Fast forward to 2026, I think they're fantastic, honestly. I think out of home has had a huge resurgence post-COVID. Everyone, it's well, I would say we're not hearing as much about return to office mandates anymore, but people have returned to offices. So office buildings, commutes, they're all back in play again. Um, and out of home is a great way to reach those commuters, those people as they're out and about traveling for business, things like that. um, Linear TV, we've gone from uh, just demo buying to now there's addressable TV. So you can get more targeted and specific with your TV buys. You can buy with audiences. You can buy programmatically, and that's on both programmatic out of home and programmatic TV. So there's so many avenues with these two more traditional, I mean, the oldest mediums in advertising that we have outside of, I don't know, radio and print, but um,
Absolutely.
there are these old channels that have been reinvented, and they have better ways to target and to have ads show up, and it allows us to use them really, really effectively in that journey.
Amazing. And I'm like, it's so interesting that you say out of home because I have seen more brands, at Canline 3 weeks ago. I lose track of time now, but the amount of B2B brands at the B2B summit that were standing up and showing that they were doing TV ads, very targeted to their audience, that they were using
Mhm.
out of home. Um, because as you say, as you've mentioned, it allows for us to be far more intentional with where we're showing up and our messaging. And I think we all as humans, if you're feeling a little bit AI saturated and digitally saturated, then so is your audience, right? So showing up in out of home where someone is in a different frame of mind goes back to the principles again, probably giving away my age. But when I was studying, radio, out of home, print, and TV were it. Digital didn't exist yet. So um,
Right.
nice to see but again, as you've mentioned before, and I think a point that you've brought home really, really nicely in the last 37 minutes is that it all has to work together. You can't just do out of home or just do linear TV. You actually have to have that strategy of everything working together cohesively. So how's your out of home speaking to all the other elements within your campaign and within your strategy? And be sure to have very specific metrics. Like your out of home metrics is going to be very different to your paid online ads, to your linear TV. So if you had to say to anyone on the discussion today live, they went back and said, I need to do out of home, what metrics would you encourage them to tie to out of home or linear TV if their board or their CFO said, but how am I going to know if that works for us?
Great question. So it depends how we buy it, obviously. There are brand lift studies that exist for both of those channels that we can leverage. There, if we're talking about addressable, that's where like addressable TV or programmatic for either of them. That's where we can have much more advanced measurement. We primarily partner with Trade Desk at Just Global. So one of my favorite parts about buying through the trade desk is there's advanced measurement. So we can actually show what are those individual touch points because you're buying all through that same ecosystem. So now we can say, okay, we had an impression in out of home. We then retargeted them on CTV. That then became a video impression. That then became a display impression, and then they filled out a form. So
Yeah.
you can connect all of those together because you bought that all programmatically through the same ecosystem, and you've now got a connected journey through all of those channels.
And how valuable for your sales team, right? To understand that journey of how they landed at you, a sales team's dream.
But even from a quality perspective, like again, back to that 40 to 60% of deals stalling, because you're engaging them in a connected story, you now have a higher qualified lead because they started with you and you're out of home. Can't tell very much of a story in out of home. It's you got,
Yeah.
I don't know what, 5, 10 seconds, depending on what the unit is. But then you've got a CTV ad, and maybe that's 15 seconds, maybe it's 30 seconds. And then you've got a video ad, which is again another 15 or 30 seconds, then display. So because you're doing all those together, it's stacked on top of each other. So that brings us back to content. Is your content all organized so that it is telling that cohesive story? So when someone has that user journey, they're brought along on that, and they learn something new. They're more bought in each step of the way. Again, I think there's a lot to it.
Yep, absolutely. I think we could have a whole new discussion just on that, right?
I
And
think
you know
so.
what? I can't believe we've actually reached time. So I have one last question that I want to ask you before we say goodbye to you. If every marketer watching could sit behind you while you planned one campaign, what's the one decision you'd want them to pay closest attention to and why?
Yeah, so I break this up between demand and brand, um, because they're different depending on what those campaigns are. For demand, um, I would say the media mix and the strategy stage, because again, I think anyone can buy on any channel. It's very easy. But the value of working with an agency like Just Global or something like that is that we can work with you on this strategy behind all the different channels and pieces that you're trying to put together, and help you figure out what the why is behind those. So, if I'm working with you, how am I getting my projections for each of the channels and what's the why behind that? How am I picking the different mixes? How are those mapping to your quarterly goals that you hopefully have? Or maybe your 6-month goals. It's, if we're getting really crazy. On the brand side, uh, for me, I think the most important pieces are connecting the dots, as I said, between the individual channels and the placements. So, what is that cohesive story with all the pieces? And for a client recently, we outlined on a slide what does that retargeting strategy look like? Again, out of home, CTV, video, display, etc.
Mm.
Uh, so all of I would say both of those.
Brilliant. Well,
Um,
thank you so much. Awesome insights to leave us with. Thank you, Josh, for joining us today. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you to everyone who joined us live today. And we look forward to welcoming you to our next session on the 27th of August. Thank you, everybody.